Welcome to the Eclipse OpenJ9 community call for June 21st. As I'm saying that, I'm suddenly wondering, but no, yes, that is the correct date. So, welcome. As always, please add your name and affiliation to the list of attendees so we have some idea of who's regularly attending. We have our agenda before us. If there's something you'd like to add to that agenda or something you think needs to be tackled, we can take that on right now off the top, so feel free to jump in with proposals, or we can add it in throughout the agenda at the appropriate place or at the end in the any other business section. So feel free to jump in and add things as needed. So I'll just pause if there's something somebody wants to talk about right off the bat. We don't have a lightning talk this week. If you would like to give one, reach out to me. We'll get something scheduled. That brings us to the end user issues. See what's come in since the last week. Had a number of issues come in that appear to be seg faults, and I believe most of these have been applied to the 033 release, so we can tackle that discussion there. For the ones that are not, is there anything that we want to be talking about now or that needs some attention? And we'll jump back to the agenda. And that brings us to the 33 release, where we have 19 issues and 12 of those marked as blockers. And we have about a week now, slightly less, until the start for M2, and about a month until the GA starts for this release. So why don't I bring up the plan and we can talk about the state of where things are at. Peter, you usually have a better handle on this, so you want to take the lead on this?
Well, I think they're all JIT issues, so maybe we should ask Daryl to comment on them.
Well, I mean, certainly the volume of them has overwhelmed the capacity of what we're able to achieve in a reasonable amount of time. But we have made some progress on some of these. They all appear to be well. So we have fixes in mind for 3 of them so far. One of them is possibly a duplicate of the other, so that'll knock potentially 4 off this list. The rest are still under investigation. They are, it's just even though the test cases are fairly small and the problems are fairly reproducible, they just take time to get into, partly because they're in some darker corners of the optimizer or the parts of the JIT or JIT runtime that haven't really been poked at very much. So, where none of these problems are regressions. I've tried many of them as far back as 0.24, and they still fail. So the urgency for fixing these in 0.33, I don't think is there. I think the originator of these problems has indicated as well that he's not expecting them to be fixed in 0.33 either. So there's a lot here that could and probably should be deferred because, frankly, some of the investigation work is starting to eat into some of the the resources that we have for 0.34 and the commitments we have for that. So if we can, we should try to move some of these forward if a fix isn't imminent, I think.
I'm wondering about some of the ones where you get incorrect results. That seems particularly problematic because people may not realize they're getting incorrect results. And
yeah, I mean, it's
mess things up.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a problem for a while. I mean, I'm not saying that they shouldn't be fixed. I'm just saying that it's it's one of those problems that that we still need to get to the bottom of some of these. So
What are you thinking about risk for the fixes? Do they seem low risk or higher risk? Like, would you be comfortable putting in the fixes into
Um,
033 or?
the one that Devin had, I think, should probably be into 0.33. I think the only one that's actually no, that one's not a regression. Oh, sorry, that one is not a regression. That one looks reasonably safe. The one that Annabelle has, that one is a little bit more involved. It's got a bit of a higher risk with it. The one that I have that I want to propose a fix for, I think that's going to be relatively safe, but I haven't even coded the fix up yet. So it's a bit of a mixed bag, unfortunately, Pete. Mm.
I'm wondering if we should delay milestone 2 by a week, and you could pick the ones that, I don't know, seem doable. It'll give you a little extra time to get the fixes finalized that you're working on, and then that'll be the line. Nothing goes in after milestone 2.
Um, so in terms of the problems that you're thinking of including, you mean the ones that we already have a fix or a fix in mind,
If they seem safe to go in,
and
you'll
if they
have to
seem
make that
safe,
call.
okay. And then the rest we can that are under investigation,
Yeah,
we
if
should
we don't
defer
have
to.
fixes soon, if we don't have fixes
Yeah.
within the time frame, and I
Okay.
don't know if
Well,
there's any that seem particularly bad, like the one that where it fails at no opt. I don't know if that would be higher priority, just because it may occur more often, getting an incorrect result.
Um, the one of the no-op ones is a DLT problem, which it's hard to say. We have to get into the root cause of some of these to know how serious of an issue it is. We've had a few DLT issues in the past few months, a couple of which have been fixed. Um, so this is probably some variant of those sorts of problems. But yeah, I mean, until we get closer to the root cause, like not just knowing that it's DLT, but knowing exactly what is it about DLT that's causing these issues, it's going to be hard to say. Um,
Is it worth disabling DLT for this release, given that it primarily targets micro-benchmark style code?
um, we'd have to do a performance assessment of that. Yeah, I know what you're saying about the kinds of applications that it's intended for, but I think that would be a riskier decision that would have to that would be making. I I mean, I wouldn't want to just turn it off because it fixes a couple of tests that have come in, and the person that opened them doesn't even consider them, doesn't even require a fix for 0.33. I mean, um,
I have the impression he's a researcher, so I don't know that he's running an application and having problems. He's doing research into how to write good tests to uncover these types of things.
yeah, I mean, the way that the tests are written are really to, to really get into some of the darker corners that aren't tested too well, and obviously it's finding some issues here. So the way that some of the tests that I've seen that are written are not the way that you would expect a human to write some of this code, right? Like the loop bounds are somewhat strange and the strides are strange. And I'm not saying that that's not possible, but it's just not something that we see very often from user code. It's probably less likely that it's going to be something that would get exposed. Um,
Yeah, and the crashes, I mean, people would be reporting the crashes if they were hitting these problems. So those ones
yeah.
are fairly.
The only one that I might want to hold out for, and sorry, Henry, to put you on the spot, but is the VP crash, because we have a couple of other issues unrelated to these problems that these user raised problems that appears to be a duplicate of, or that may be the same issue, and one of those happens to be an IBM customer problem, so it has a bit more interest from IBM in getting that resolved. Um,
Daryl, is this
so
one of those, the Eclipse 2021-12 crashes after switching from 17?
that is one of the possible duplicates of that, yes. And we have another problem as well that's internal to IBM. So that one, I know Henry's made some progress on that. So if in terms of the highest priority of something I would maybe want to get into 0.33, it would be that one, but we still need to get to the root cause of that one.
So what do people think of moving the milestone 2 out by a week plus whatever holidays we've got? That would make it after the July 1st long weekend.
I mean, it would give a bit more time.
You have an extra
If
4 days, I guess.
yeah, if you're, I mean, I have to kind of balance the work that people are doing on these problems versus some of the other commitments that we have. So I can't say at this point that people will be working for those 4 days on all those extra days on these problems. Just
right. So you can pick the ones that you think are important, the ones that you just talked about, the ones like that's a dupe of the Eclipse one, or the ones that seem duplicates of IBM internal issues. Pick the higher priority ones and work on those. And
yeah, well, I mean, certainly a week would help for that. Yes.
And then for anything else, if we're moving it out, I would move it to 0.35, not 0.34, because these are not particular to Java 19. I don't think we need them in the Java 19 milestone plan. We should just move them to 0.35.
Considering that I assume, given the code that they do affect 19 as well, though.
They might affect 19, but they're not specific to 19. And what I'd like to see in the 19 milestone plan are things that are specific to 19.
I'm with you on 19 specific issues being in that plan, but if these have the priority that we're saying, for things that give wrong results and that kind of thing, then I'm surprised that we would be moving those past 19.
Well, we're okay to move them out of 0.33, so I don't see why they'd be a priority for 19. Or we're going to have bigger problems for 19 than worrying about these things which aren't regressions.
Yeah, I think that argument cuts both ways. My preference would be to see them end up in 19, and if we can get them fixed there, great, because that gives the fixes even more time to soak before we see them back in the next quarterly release.
I mean, I won't object if you want to put them in the 19 milestone plan, but I wouldn't be surprised to see some move out.
I mean, you can put them in the 19 plan, like the 0.4 plan, and we will continue to work on them as we have cycles, and if we can reevaluate their placement in 0.34 when we do this exercise in about a month, when we start looking at some of the issues for 0.34.
They are marked as blockers, so you can find them without having them in the Java 19 plan. And it just gives us more focus on what we need to do to get 19 solid.
And I would say if we put the blocker tag on them, I don't know how well we do for searching through other areas or things with that kind of tag. I know that we focus on these calls at least on things that are in milestone plans.
Well, it's a change that I was trying to make a couple of iterations ago. It's to try to keep the milestone plans smaller and more realistic, and have plans for new versions of Java just contain items specific to that version of Java and not other things that are going on. So when we did around the last Java 18 release, we were also trying to keep an eye on the milestone plan after Java 18. I don't know if you remember.
I do. I just, if I look at this plan, we have other things that we put the blocker tag on, let them drag from release to release with this system. So I'm a little concerned that we're either misusing our blocker tag or we're at a point where we're just dragging things from release to release.
We are kind of misusing our blocker tag. We could change them all to high priority.
If we're not going to have resources to look at them, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. My preference is to put them in the 19 plan and, if necessary, move them forward again. But if that's not the way the rest of you would like to work on this, I'm not going to object strongly. So
You do need to have some kind of a label, though, that indicates that this really is an issue that must get fixed for release. So I don't want to water everything down and say that, there should be some label, and blocker is probably it. That means that we must work on this and have some kind of an answer for this release. So, but whether or not, let's say in this particular case, all of these should be considered blockers, or maybe they should be, as Pete says, high priority. But then again, we never really do anything to distinguish other priorities other than blocker, right? It's either a blocker or it isn't, and if it isn't, we don't really.
Yeah, that's kind of what I found in the past is nobody was paying attention to the priority labels, so it became blocker or not a blocker.
Right. Well, I will leave it in the hands of you guys who are doing the moving things forward to decide whether to put them in the 19 plan or past that.
Yes, the way I look at it is these seem like blockers, but I was too optimistic in thinking that they could be blockers for 033 because we have very limited time.
So, Pete, you had proposed moving the M2 date. What was the new date you were proposing?
I think it would have to be the 5th because isn't the 4th a holiday?
July 5th.
I think at least for a number of people on this call, it's a holiday on Monday, on the 4th.
Right. And looking at the point of time that we're at, I think that covers where we're at for 33. Let's take a look at 034 and Java 19. I'm assuming the primary pieces there continue to be Loom and Panama. Jack, is there an update on where we're at with Loom?
Yes, Dan. So for Loom, last week we've merged in a couple of PRs related to both the JVMTI callback capability, which has been added to allow JDWP tools to work on Java 19. Also, there was a added PR which implements the basic native VM structures and initial stub to the continuation class in Java. Right now, I am working on implementing the native APIs that are related to continuation in order for us to support the basic entry and yield support for running a virtual thread. That work is in progress. Hopefully it will be done by end of this week to be reviewed and merged. So once that has been merged, it will allow us to, from a functional perspective, create and run virtual thread.
So that is our June 24th deadline?
Yeah.
If I heard that correctly, it sounds like we're on track for that?
In terms of what has been done, we're on track for it, but I don't know if we would be able to get the changes reviewed and merged by the end of the week. I'll have an update next week in terms of where we're at for this timeline.
So I'll mark us as orange.
And from the GC side, I've heard from Lynn that he had been completing most of the code changes needed in order to have GC properly support Loom. Still a few minor changes required, and PRs are on the way to be reviewed and merged.
I would add, Alex here, I would add that there is a little bit more complexity on GC side that we envisioned from yesterday's and today's discussion. Not sure exactly how many days that may be extra or so. Essentially, from our side is what the problem that we see is that when we scan a continuation object, kind of a infrastructure internally within the OMR side is we expect to have a kind of an iterator. Usually we would just scan an ordinary object, right? And we would have an iterator that would give us reference slots. However, the iteration of a continuation object will actually scan the stacks, and it doesn't have really an iterator. It works on a kind of concept of a called stack walker, and here's a callback, for every slot found that you're supposed to find. So that's not kind of an API, ideally for us, So we're trying to see, can we have a way around that? Ideally, from our perspective, would be, if we could have an iterator for instead of this callback of API, I haven't talked to GAC yet, so probably talk during the day or try to see, what we can do.
Thanks, Alex. Jen, do you have an update on Panama?
The code change of opcode work still under review. I'm checking the codes against the types comments. Yeah, that's it.
And are we on track for our schedule as well there?
I think yes.
Right. Is there anything else that we want to touch on for the Java 19 release? Point out that we're about a month away from our branch date. And moving down, do we have an update from the adopt side?
I'm here, but nothing particularly new this week. Nothing to report.
Stuart? Adam, is there an update on the infrastructure?
Okay. So keep an eye on Artifactory space because it is creeping up again. Equinix new disk on one of our KVMs. We're starting to set that up and have some machines cloned over to that. So that's slowly going forward. For Windows, we did roll out 4 machines total for 2019. They seem to be mostly functionally working, but the antivirus/firewall seems to be causing some issues and slowdown. So investigation is still ongoing there to see what we can do about that. We did upgrade Jenkins to the latest LTS. It did cause a bit of downtime because there was an underlying config change that needed to have some sorting out. And we did apply the change for the label master to do the new built-in label. So that seems to have worked fine. Maybe heads up, maybe since Stuart's on the call, heads up if adopt moves to the new version that they no longer use etc default Jenkins config file. They use the different process, so just watch out if you have custom options there. You can pick me offline if you want to talk about it.
Don't see Devin, so we'll skip the CMake. See Marius, so we'll skip over the JIT server update. Toby, do you have an update on CRIU?
Yeah, so now we're starting to look at there's some kind of I guess you classify them as expected deadlock behaviors due to single thread mode. But we're starting to see some that users don't realistically have any chance to mitigate. So we're exploring ways to add support in the JVM to handle these specific cases. So one example is method handle resolution, which may be triggered by string concatenation or just invoking a lambda. The method type table acquires resolving a method handle acquires the method type intern table lock, and so if you happen to be in the process of resolving method handle and then halted, and then the checkpoint thread runs a hook that does the same thing, then you would incur a deadlock. So we're looking at ways to mitigate that scenario. A similar problem can occur with initializing string encodings. So there are a few places in the JDK where this kind of problem can occur. So we would like to come up with a general solution for this, and that way we can avoid those cases. That's the major thing we're looking at right now.
Thanks, Toby. Daryl, is there an update on the Mac M1 work?
Nothing new for this week.
And I know it's not on our agenda anymore, but that need, is there an update or a timeline on the blog for the method handles related?
It's going to take some time because our priorities have shifted to supporting Loom for Java 19. So I would say it will take at least 3 more weeks, so mid-July.
Are we shipping the OpenJDK method handles in 0.33
No,
on JDK 8?
no, I think that work has paused also until Loom is fully supported in Java 19.
Okay, because that's the critical piece. As we change the method handle implementation in 8, we need that blog to go out ahead of time for that, so that we have something to point to users at, so they know why the change was made and have some understanding of what's going to happen there.
So I will tie those things together as soon as we are ready to enable OpenJDK method handles. In 8, I will have the blog ready 2 weeks prior to the release.
Okay. Thanks, Badmeet.
Would you like it to be tracked in this doc, or shall I keep it out of it for the time being?
Probably doesn't make sense to track it here. We'll just leave that in your hands to make sure the pieces come together.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anything else that we need to discuss today? All right, then. Thank you, everybody, and we'll have the next one of these calls in a week.
Thank you.